I'm Dawn Hill, host of Heart, Mind, and Purpose, a podcast where we explore what it means to live an aligned and wholehearted life. I am a professional counselor with over 25 years of experience and a deep love for meaningful conversation. I bring you honest reflections, soulful questions, and meaningful tools for managing life. Whether you're seeking clarity, connection, or simply a space to breathe, this podcast is here for you. Tune in weekly and join me on the journey.
Welcome to Heart, Mind, and Purpose, the podcast where we explore how our inner lives shape the way we love, connect, and grow. Hi, this is Paul Gramercy, producer of today's episode, where Dawn takes us into an important and very relatable conversation about how our relationships affect our nervous system and how our nervous system affects our relationships. From toxic environments and chronic criticism to safe connection, co-regulation, and self-awareness, this episode helps us understand why some patterns keep repeating and what healing can begin to look like. This is a thoughtful conversation about safety, stress, accountability, and the kind of relationship health that grows when we learn to understand both ourselves and each other more clearly. This episode is called When Relationships Get Under Your Skin. Now here's your host, Dawn Hill.
Welcome back to Heart, Mind, and Purpose. Today we're talking about something that touches nearly every part of our lives, even if we don't realize it. It's how our relationships affect our nervous system and how our nervous system affects our relationships. Now that may sound a little scientific at first, but what I really mean is this. The people around us shape how safe, settled, connected, and emotionally steady we feel. And that matters more than we often think. Because sometimes what we call a relationship issue is not just about communication. Sometimes it's also about our stress. Sometimes it's about old wounds. Or sometimes it's about feeling unseen, unsafe, criticized, or overwhelmed. And sometimes, if we're honest, it's also about the ways we ourselves may be contributing to the problem. So today I want to talk about that whole picture. How relationships can dysregulate us, how healthy relationships can help regulate us, why some couples or families keep getting stuck in the same patterns, and why self-awareness, accountability, and nervous system health all belong in the same conversation. Because relationships are not just emotional, they're physiological too. Most of us understand that relationships affect our emotions. We know a good conversation can lift us up. We know rejection can hurt. And we know criticism can stay with us for longer than we wanted to. But sometimes we forget that relationships do not just affect our feelings. They affect the whole nervous system. Our thoughts, our body, our stress levels, our sleep, our digestion, our ability to focus, and our sense of safety. Human beings are relational by nature. We are not designed to live emotionally cut off from one another. Healthy relationships can give us support, belonging, steadiness, and comfort. But unhealthy relationships, whether that is a toxic friendship, a difficult marriage, a dysfunctional family system, peer pressure, emotional abuse, chronic criticism, or even a toxic workplace can throw our nervous system off balance in very real ways. And when that happens, the body often starts living in a kind of chronic stress mode. So let's talk about what dysregulation can look like. When someone is living under constant negativity, criticism, instability, manipulation, emotional pressure, or relational tension, the nervous system often starts acting like it has to stay on guard all of the time. The stress response gets activated. Your cortisol levels rise, and your body stays braced. The sympathetic nervous system, that's the fight, flight, or freeze side of things, can start dominating, and the parasympathetic side, the part that helps us rest and settle, can become underactive. That kind of dysregulation can show up as any of the following: anxiety, depression, hypervigilance, headaches, insomnia, digestive issues, irritability, emotional shutdown, trouble focusing, or feeling easily overwhelmed. And this is important. Sometimes people think they're just too sensitive or just bad at relationships, when in reality their nervous system has been trying to survive a difficult environment. And that does not mean every hard relationship is traumatic, but it does mean our bodies keep score in ways we often underestimate. Now, to make this a little more simple, there's one important part of the nervous system called the vagus nerve. And you don't have to remember all the science, but it helps to know that it plays a big role in helping the body calm down, connect, and feel safe. The vagus nerve is deeply connected to social engagement and emotional well-being. That means positive social cues matter more than people often realize. Things like kind eye contact, a warm tone of voice, active listening, physical affection that feels safe, feeling seen and accepted, being in a supportive work or home environment. Those things are not just nice, they are regulating. They send signals to the body that say, you are safe here, you are not alone, and you do not have to brace in this moment. And when those cues are present, the body is more likely to soften. Trust can grow, relaxation grows, and connection becomes more possible. But when the nervous system has been dysregulated for a while, vagal tone can be dampened, and chronic stress can do that. Inflammation can do that. Anxiety and depression can contribute to that. Poor sleep, poor diet, lack of movement, and substance misuse all make it harder too. So this is not just about one hard conversation. It is often about the whole environment a person is living in. Negative social experiences activate the body's threat system, and that can happen through rejection, criticism, bullying, emotional abuse, gaslighting, being repeatedly misunderstood, living in a home or work environment that feels unsafe or tense, and being in relationships that are manipulative, inconsistent, or boundary violating. And in the culture we live in now, with long work weeks, high stress, fractured families, online hostility, constant comparison, people are carrying a lot. So it is no surprise that many nervous systems are tired. What's hard is that prolonged exposure to those kinds of social cues can make a person more vulnerable, not just emotionally, but mentally and physically. One may start expecting criticism, or scanning for rejection, or over-explaining, people-pleasing, withdrawing, snapping, numbing, or feeling lonely when there are other people around. And again, this is where relationships and nervous system health overlap, because the body does not separate them as neatly as we do. Now here is the hopeful part, because while relationships can wound us, they can also help us heal. Even though relationships can contribute to dysregulation, healthy relationships can also become a path toward healing. When we are in relationships where we feel seen, heard, respected, and emotionally safe, the nervous system can begin recalibrating. It can shift out of constant hyperarousal or shutdown and begin to move towards more balance. That is part of why healthy connection matters so much. Not because relationships are supposed to fix us, but because safe connection is regulating, and that healing can happen in a number of ways. Sometimes it happens through learning how to reparent parts of ourselves that were neglected or unsupported. Sometimes it happens through understanding our attachment patterns. Sometimes it happens through being in a conscious relationship where both people are trying to grow, communicate, and co-regulate more intentionally. And sometimes that happens through therapy, where someone finally experiences a safe, steady relationship with room to be real. So let's take a look at reparenting attachment in the inner world we bring into relationships. One powerful piece of this work is something called reparenting. And what that really means is learning to offer yourself some of the care, steadiness, and compassion that may have been missing earlier in life. And that might look like self-compassion instead of self-contempt, an inner dialogue that is kind instead of shaming, self-soothing instead of self-abandonment, and learning to meet emotional needs in healthier ways. Because when people have a lot of unmet needs or old relational wounds, they often carry those patterns into the present relationships. That is where attachment styles can be helpful to understand, as some people tend to be more secure and trusting, others become anxious and seek a lot of reassurance, while others will pull away, avoid, or fear intimacy, and yet still others swing between wanting closeness and fearing it. These patterns are not destiny, but they do shape how people respond to stress, connection, conflict, and vulnerability. And when we begin noticing them, we can stop saying only things like, "This relationship is the problem," and start asking ourselves, what patterns am I bringing into this relationship? And this is where real growth begins. There's something called nervous system mismatch, which means when two people are in different states. And this is really important, especially in marriages, close relationships, and family dynamics. Sometimes what looks like a communication problem is actually a nervous system mismatch. That means two people are in two different physiological states at the same time. For instance, one person may be activated, wanting connection right now. The other may be overwhelmed and needing distance. One partner may want to talk it all through immediately. The other may go quiet, shut down, or struggle to find words. One may push, the other may pull away. One may feel, if we don't deal with this right now, we'll disconnect. The other may feel, if we keep talking right now, I'm going to shut down completely. Neither person is necessarily wrong. Both are trying to get back to safety. But when those survival strategies collide, each person often misreads the other. The pursuer feels rejected, the withdrawer feels overwhelmed, and both people leave the interaction feeling unseen. That is why some couples or families repeat the same argument over and over, not because they do not care, but because their nervous systems are mismatched in the moment. And communication alone does not fix that, because if both people are dysregulated, words do not land well. Tones feel harsher, listening goes down, problem solving gets worse, and timing matters more than either person realizes. Sometimes regulation has to come before resolution. And this is where co-regulation becomes such a gift. Co-regulation is what happens when one person's steadiness helps another person settle. It can happen through active listening, a calm voice, predictable presence, empathy, safe physical touch, sitting together quietly, taking a break and returning later, and or doing something soothing together. Healthy relationships do not require both people to be perfectly calm all the time, but they do involve learning, keyword there, learning how to create enough safety that connection can return. That takes self-awareness, and sometimes that sounds like, I am getting activated, I want to talk, but I feel myself escalating, I'm shutting down and I need a few minutes, can we come back to this when we're both calmer? Or, I'm not leaving you, I'm just trying to regulate. That kind of language can change so much because it moves people away from blame towards clarity. Now I want to turn gently but honestly to another piece of this conversation. And sometimes the problem is not only what has happened to us, sometimes the problem is how we are showing up. And this is not meant to shame anyone, it is meant to invite growth, because one of the hardest and most important questions we can ask is, am I contributing to the pain in this relationship? Am I avoiding hard conversations? Am I refusing accountability? Am I defensive when confronted? Do I apologize sincerely or at all? Do I manipulate, withdraw affection, guilt trip, or overreact? Do I respect boundaries? Am I inconsistent or undependable? Do I take everything personally? Do I stay stuck in blame instead of looking for solutions? Or am I projecting my own pain onto others? And that is hard work, and it is also freeing work. Because if you're contributing to the cycle, then you are not powerless, because you can change. Which brings us to perception, patterns, and the stories we tell ourselves. One reason this is hard is because perception is not always pure reality. We filter life through our own wounds, memories, fears, values, and interpretations. So two people can have the same interaction and walk away with very different stories about what happened. And that is why self-reflection matters. It helps us ask, what actually happened? What did I feel? What did I make it mean? Could there be another interpretation? And then there are the patterns. If the same kinds of conflicts keep showing up and keep happening in different relationships, that is worth paying attention to. Repeated arguments, repeated breakups, repeated resentment, repeated feelings of being misunderstood, repeated emotional shutdown, or repeated blaming. Patterns are often clues. Not clues that we are hopeless, but clues that something inside us needs attention, and this is where deeper work can be helpful. Sometimes the things we most criticize in others touch something unresolved in ourselves. Or sometimes what we reject in ourselves gets projected outward. Sometimes we want others to change so we don't have to face our own pain, fear, or immaturity. And again, that realization is not meant to crush us, it is meant to wake us up. And accountability is not shame. If you begin to notice toxic or unhealthy traits in yourself, that does not mean you are beyond hope. It means you are becoming more self-aware. And self-awareness is such a gift. Some common signs that we are contributing to relationship harm include some of the following: avoiding difficult conversations, refusing accountability, not apologizing, manipulating, crossing boundaries, being inconsistent, taking too much personally, being overly judgmental, focusing on problems more than solutions, threatening to cut people off instead of working through discomfort, or expecting others to manage our emotional world for us. Sometimes stress, anxiety, depression, insecurity, or old wounds can intensify those traits. That is why caring for your own mental health matters so much. Mindfulness can help, therapy helps, deep breathing helps, slowing things down helps, self-reflection helps, and taking responsibility helps, and offering a sincere apology can help. Not just sorry, but real accountability, owning what you did, listening to how it affected the other person, asking what repair might look like, and then actually changing your behavior over time. This is all what rebuilds trust. Now there's another side to this, especially for those people pleasers and overfunctioners. Sometimes we take too much responsibility. We make other people's feelings our problem. We obsess over their reactions. We feel responsible for keeping everyone okay. We fear that if someone is upset with us, we must fix it immediately. But that all creates resentment and unhealthy dynamics. Part of emotional maturity is learning to distinguish between what is mine to own and what belongs to the other person. That might sound like my frustration is valid and they are also allowed to have their reaction. I can care without over-caring, or I can respect their feelings without making myself responsible for all of them. That kind of boundary work protects relationships too, because it helps us show up with compassion instead of resentment or control. So what helps regulate the nervous system in relationships and social situations? Here are a few simple but important things. Prioritize your own self-care. Set clear boundaries. Seek supportive and uplifting relationships. Practice active listening. Engage in positive social activities. Build self-awareness around your triggers or your glimmers. Now, everyone knows what a trigger is, but a glimmer, those are the things that help us feel uplifted. Start noticing those as much as we notice what triggers us, and pay attention or build self-awareness to both of those things. Use deep breathing and grounding practices. Develop healthier coping strategies. Seek therapy or counseling when needed. Slow down conflict instead of forcing resolution in the heat of the moment. And in relationships, specifically, name states instead of blame. Reduce urgency. Take intentional pauses. Revisit conversations after you're calm. Choose compassion over contempt, and build predictable, safe connection, because safety opens the door that communication walks through. Our relationships and our nervous systems are deeply connected. Unhealthy relationships can dysregulate us. Safe relationships can help us heal. Stress can make us misread one another. A mismatched nervous system can turn love into confusion, and repeated patterns can reveal wounds we still need to face. But none of that means we are doomed. It means there is work to do, good work, honest work, healing work that often begins with two simple questions. Number one, what is happening in my nervous system right now? And number two, how am I contributing to this pattern? Those are very brave questions, because when we stop asking only what's wrong with them and begin also asking what needs attention in me, we move toward real freedom. Not shame, not self-blame, but freedom. Freedom to regulate more intentionally, freedom to communicate more honestly, freedom to apologize, repair, and grow, and freedom to stop calling old patterns fate. And finally, freedom to build relationships that feel more steady, safe, and life-giving. And that kind of growth blesses not only us, but everyone around us. Thank you for spending this time with me on Heart, Mind, and Purpose. If this episode resonated with you, maybe sit with it for a bit. Notice what it stirred in you. Notice where you feel invited to reflect, to heal, or to take responsibility in a new and fresh way. So until next time, may you be kind to your heart, clear in your mind, and grounded in your purpose. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Heart, Mind, and Purpose. If this episode gave you language for patterns you felt but haven't known how to name, we hope you'll share it with someone who may need that same understanding and encouragement. If you found this conversation helpful, we'd love for you to share it with someone who could use some encouragement. You can also find resources, listener handouts, and more at dawnmariehill.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode as we keep exploring how the heart, the mind, and our sense of purpose all work together for a life well lived. If you have questions or comments, please contact Dawn at heartmindandpurpose.podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.